Do you get this outside elbow pain when you're holding on to heavy objects at work? Or while sipping your favorite beverage at home? Or while performing resistance training exercises? Give me 5 minutes and I'll explain to you the best way that you can address your outside elbow pain. Prehabbers, welcome back to the channel. Dr. Arash Maksudi, and today we're going to be talking all about the lateral elbow. Now, if you're not a prehabber and you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. We come out with these YouTube episodes weekly. So for today's episode, lateral elbow pain, also referred to as tennis elbow, also referred to as lateral epicondylalgia, is a very common issue on this outer elbow. Now, this happens upwards of 1 to 3% of the population will experience this at some point. So don't be concerned. There are good exercises that we'll show you in this video that you can use to relieve that elbow pain. All right, guys, for exercise number 1, make sure to take your mouse, hover it over that like button, and click. Make sure to like these videos if you've been enjoying these. Now, for the real exercise number 1, what we're going to do is have your elbow bent into a 90-degree position with your hand off of some type of elevated surface so you can move it. Next, bring your wrist into just a little bit of extension here. This is neutral, this is extension, this is flexion. So I want to go into about 20 to 30 degrees of extension, and I just want to hold that. I can use my opposite hand to apply a little bit of resistance as well. This is an isometric exercise that addresses those extensor muscles here. So I'm just going to hold that, make sure I feel it, and I can put as much resistance as I want, and then I relax. Now, if this is fine and I have no discomfort with this, what I can do is start performing these isotonically while I go through a range of motion. And it's important to note, if you are in pain, isometrics are a great way just to calm that tissue down. It's a great analgesic and people feel a lot better with that. So if those are fine for you, you can progress into isotonics where you're moving through a range. And I like to use a little bit of weight with this. Now, you don't have to use a dumbbell. You can use anything. You can use a grocery bag, put some items in there, and do the same thing where you're going into wrist flexion. And then slowly bring your wrist up towards that ceiling. And you can see how I'm using those outer elbow muscles to pull my wrist up as high as I can, and then slowly repeat back and forth. You can see how I'm dropping down into flexion and then come up. Now, the extensor carpi radialis brevis is the most commonly affected muscle out of these, and that muscle will perform wrist extension and radial deviation. Now, let's go to exercise number 2. Exercise number 2 is actually a stretch. You want to proceed with caution, especially if you're irritated. So for this stretch, you want to bring your arm up, bring the opposite hand to provide some flexion resistance here. So I'm bringing my hand into flexion. Now from here, here's the key. I don't feel a stretch here. Now, as I twist this elbow in, I start to feel a pull on the top of my forearm. And the more I twist my elbow in like that, the more I feel that tension. So just by doing wrist flexion doesn't really do it for me. It may do it for you, and that's enough for your stretch. But for me, I need to twist that elbow in, and now I feel a good pull there, and I'll just hold that. Now, if I want to load this a little bit more, I can actually put my arm up against the surface like this. So same thing, I go into wrist flexion, and this is the key. Don't feel a stretch. So I'm just going to keep twisting my elbow in, and now I feel this pull here. This is where you want to be targeting. These tissues that go from the wrist and hand are the ones that come up all the way to the outside of the elbow. So try that stretch out and let us know in the comments below if you felt it in the right area. So for the last exercise, we're going to perform radial deviation. Remember how I talked about the ECRB muscle performing wrist extension and radial deviation? It's important to also strengthen into this range. Now, I have a dumbbell here, and I'm going to come off the edge of this table and perform radial deviations where I go into actually the opposite position, which is ulnar deviation, come up, and then squeeze this way, and I should feel those muscles working as I pull up. And go within a range of motion that you feel comfortable with. You may not feel comfortable pulling all the way back. That's fine. You can stay in smaller ranges of motion and then work your way into it. Now, if you change the fulcrum here and actually bring your hand towards the edge of one side, you can go through, the resistance becomes a lot more challenging. And you can see how that weight is the same amount of weight. However, there's more resistance against those muscles as I perform this exercise. This is a progression of the typical radial deviation with my hand in the middle of the dumbbell. Now, if you don't have a dumbbell, do not worry. You can use anything. You can use here's a broomstick, for example, and depending on how difficult you want to make it, you can hold onto the edge of it. So for example, if I go in the middle, this exercise will be a little bit easier, and I'll go through less motion just because there's something in the way here. However, if I want to make this challenging, I'll come up all the way to the tip, and the entire broomstick now is going to be moving based on the amount of radial and ulnar deviation my wrist goes through. And I'm just going to go back and forth here, very slow and controlled. And I'm feeling these muscles work a ton as I do this. So remember, these muscles perform wrist extension and radial deviation. So with this video, we addressed everything pretty local to this area. However, it's very, very important to address muscles that are proximal. Same thing with knee pain. You know how with knee pain, people address their hips and glutes a ton, and it's pretty shown to help with improving knee outcomes. However, with the elbow, people oftentimes miss the boat by not addressing their thoracic spine mobility or scapula stability. These things are very, very important, and this is why we came out with a prehab program designed for the elbow. Not only do we address the elbow, but we also address the entire kinetic chain, which addresses those thoracic spine mobility or shoulder stability impairments that a lot of people have that don't address with elbow pain. So hopefully you guys took something from this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. We come out with prehab episodes weekly, and we're actually going to link the elbow prehab program right over here if you guys want to learn more. Until next week. Thank you guys for tuning in. Dr. Arash Maksudi here. If you guys learned something, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And also, if you guys want to watch another prehab episode, click this button here. We may go over things like the shoulder or the hip or the knee, even